Hello, welcome to MassInform. What does minimum wage, paid leave, time and a half on holidays and Sundays, and the tax rate Massachusetts all have in common? They're all in one bill, and they all just got signed by Governor Charlie Baker.
Hello, my name is Hargi Chani, and I'm joined by my friend.
John Norris?
We're here to talk about the Act relative to minimum wage, paid family medical leave, and the sales tax holiday. It was a bill that was recently signed into law by Governor Baker in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So let's talk about the first part, minimum wage. So there was actually a ballot measure that was going to go up to try to increase the minimum wage to $15 in the Commonwealth. And in lieu of that, they decided to sort of create a bill that would include multiple other things, including some other ballot measures, and not bother having the ballot measure. But by doing that, they could potentially have some compromises from the other side of it. So, okay, that's an interesting idea. So now instead of the ballot measure, which I think was going to have the minimum wage go up to 15 by 2022, it will now happen in 2023.
Correct. It's going to skip 1 year, the first year.
Yeah, and so, okay, so we get a little bit of a leeway there. And then, that potentially could, help some folks that are in that area where they're not making enough. Now, what I find with, minimum wage is if we did not have any safety measures, right? So if we didn't have any safety nets for people who are not doing well enough, they can't sustain themselves, they need help for housing or for food or whatever, those, I agree that we should probably have those. I don't want people starving. I certainly don't want people to be homeless. It's fine, but the downside to that is the economy then does not have to handle that, right? So, if somebody cannot afford to live because the wages are too low, well, that problem solves itself because, well, the employee wouldn't be able to sustain, therefore the employee would go away, and then the employer would have to go find somebody else, right? So that problem just becomes a headache for them, and it'd probably behoove them to just pay them enough so that they can sustain themselves, so that they can just keep working, right? So, but unfortunately, we have these safety nets, in which case, for a standard employer, hey, we've given them an out. On top of that, we have a minimum wage, which just sets a standard. Here's the minimum I need to pay you. Good enough. And then, if you need more assistance, fine. The government will take care of that. I don't have to worry about it. So we create this problem, and we try to fix it by adding an increase in minimum wage. I get it. I understand that that's still not good enough to have a low minimum wage and then all these safety nets, and then people have to work and then also ask for help from the government. Which in essence gives those corporations sort of a little tax break, as it were. But I don't know if this is a good or a bad way to go about it. I certainly have other ideas of how you might want to solve this, but I'm okay with it in the essence that I don't want people to have assistance if they're already working. So I'd be okay with increasing the minimum wage. There are certainly some potential downsides to that, but I'll let you get into those. What do you think?
So I take a slightly different approach. I think if we raise the minimum wage, then companies that are commonly employing people who make $11 an hour, $12 an hour, $30 an hour now are going to incur more cost. Mm-hmm. And so the only way that they can adjust for that is by either increasing prices, reducing the number of employees, hours they have, or maybe reducing some benefits. They're definitely not going to assume they're going to make it up and increase sales. Now, you had a point about the fact that our government gives people assistance based on their current income. Mm-hmm. And this would definitely alleviate some of that. But what I see in the future, because of inflation usually being driven by this in our state, that we're going to see that the legislature is going to increase the minimum they need in order to get those. So they're going to have minimum wage, and on top of that, they're going to have the benefits from the state, which means that the taxpayers are still on the hook for it. On top of that, the state will see increased revenue from this because the amount of taxes that your employers pay is going to go up because they're going to have to pay more for the wages that you earn. This is not a good thing in my mind because you're going to suppress the businesses that are already there. You're going to drive some of them out of business, but you're also going to raise the minimum bar for businesses to actually come into the marketplace. If Johnny come lately to the market and I want to open up a new business, I now have to pay someone $15 an hour as opposed to $11 an hour. This whole deal was touted as a grand bargain. I think this was not a very good bargain for the business owners and for people who want to start up new businesses, our entrepreneurs, our creators of labor. So I think this is going to have a negative effect on our economy. I think we're going to see more people going towards unemployment. We've seen this actually recently. McDonald's in Norwood decided to go from all employees to putting in some electronic kiosks and reducing the number of employees they have. As soon as the cost of the employee is higher than having electronics or innovation, they're going to go to the innovation. So we've now cost these people their labor and their work.
Which I actually agree with, and I actually would applaud. I like that. No, eliminate work that isn't necessary. If it's not able to pay them enough to live, then it isn't work they should be doing.
Yep.
Simply, it's not a going concern at that point. So take away the human labor, and instead, let's put that on people making those machines. Right?
Exactly.
So that's fine. I'm totally okay with that.
That's a part that a lot of people seem to ignore is that if we have these electronics, these automations, then we're going to need people to make these automations.
Yeah. Or it frees us up to do other things. You know, one of the things I keep finding is people say there's no work, but I don't know about you, but every time I'm going to work, there's more work than I can possibly do.
Correct.
That's always the case.
Yep.
I'm sure pretty much everybody in the world has that problem. Maybe there are people sitting twiddling their thumbs, but most people have too much work to do.
Exactly.
So, you know, and hopefully that just means that we have more people available to do that labor. That would just make things better.
Exactly.
Better in the long run, to me anyway.
And those people that are leaving, they're not just going to sit on their butts and do nothing. They might collect unemployment for a little while. They might go into government assistance.
Find something else.
But they will go on to something else. Yeah. Especially, I mean, this is a common thing right now. The unemployment rate is so low. It's about 4% in Massachusetts. They're going to find something.
All right, so part 2 is to look at the family leave portion.
Mm-hmm.
So the family leave portion allows you to take a scheduled leave for family or personal medical issues.
Yep.
And you can take up to 26 weeks over multiple incidences. You can take 20 weeks at a time for yourself, 12 for family members. So this is kind of an interesting thing. You know, for those folks who already have a sort of short-term and long-term disability, you might have a bit better of a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this is that you can get up to $850. There are some guidelines on amount of income before you get to that level, but $850 a week, and it's given to you by the state, not by your employer.
Mm-hmm.
The employer can, or I guess you can use your first 7 days of sick leave towards this, in which case the employer would just pay you your normal your wages that you normally would get. That's part of the standard sick leave that we passed a law about, I think it was maybe 3 or so years ago in the state, where you're required to accrue sick leave now as part of your normal benefit while working in the state. So, you know, the $850, and then to allow that to happen, since the state is paying for it, they've created a new tax, and that new tax is a 0.63% payroll tax that is now levied against your wages, and it is split again like the federal payroll tax for Social Security and Medicare. It is levied half on you, half on your employer. So that's how they're paying for it. So, you know, my thoughts on this are that, you know, I like the fact that it's for family members as well. That's kind of cool. That's a new benefit. However, it may have a detriment on short-term and long-term disability. For those companies that are already paying for that insurance for you,
exactly.
You may end up with a lower benefit if they decide to say, you know what, this is the standard now, this is what the state wants us to do, and we have to pay this tax for it, so maybe that's what we will do instead. I don't know if we will continue with the short-term and long-term disability. Hopefully we will, because I think those are better programs because they pay out more, especially if you're, you know, say $850 is, you know, probably if you make about 50-ish K a year or more, is probably not going to be enough. And so, you know, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but that's just something that might be a detriment to some office, you know, workers. So it's kind of where I am on this. I think there are some pluses, there are some minuses, especially for those folks who have nothing. I get it. This is great. You know, it gives them something, and they hopefully can come back to a job. That's kind of the point of this. You know, and family, you know, medical issues happen for families and yourself. It happens. I get it. So it is kind of a nice potential benefit, but there are some detriments, especially since it was kind of the way it was structured is kind of a universal thing. There are exemptions available for companies that have a better program, but would have to see how that works out, especially for a lot of companies have both you know, office type and, you know, hourly retail type employees. What does that mean? How does that benefit play out? So we'll have to see how that gets implemented.
But it's your stereotypical program where everybody pays in on a tax,
Yeah.
and then the benefits are given to some. And the benefit is not useful for people that are making over 50K, like you said. So for people who are making over that, this is not useful, this is not helpful, unless they're going out for somebody else, a family member.
Yeah.
And in that case, it might be a moderate benefit, but the problem is you have to weigh that against how much you're actually making.
Yeah.
So that $850 cap is problematic. Now this raises $800 million in new taxes. I'm unconvinced that this won't end up in the general fund and go to other things. But at the same time, these benefits that are going to be paid out are through the state. They're not through your employer. So that's the coordination between your employer and the state on how they're going to allow you to leave and come back. I I don't like the fact that they're going to try to force this onto the market because that means that a lot of companies are going to default down to this level. Whenever the government tries to make some sort of a program in order to make it beneficial for people, a lot of people take that as the bare minimum. So, as Guy was saying earlier, if there is a higher amount that you're getting right now, like the two of us get short and long-term disability, there's no reason why the companies wouldn't forego those. It's already paying this tax in order to give you this benefit and just give you this benefit that goes through the state, which would be lesser for certain people. So in all, I'm not a big fan of this at all. I think it puts another pressure on the market that doesn't need to be there.
So I guess that's kind of how that went. And the other side of this is that eventually there needs to be something from the other side, right? So that the retailers and other businesses had some sort of say. I think this was a part of this bill that was kind of interesting, is that it wasn't just the government.
Yep.
They actually went and talked to the retail and corporate industries and said, well, do you want to come to the table? And for the longest time, that's not happened. And in this case, they said, yeah, we might as well, because then we can get something that's beneficial for us as well.
Correct.
And so that's an interesting thing that they did. I applaud the effort. I think it was great that it's finally two ways. It's not just the government sending it out, but industry coming back and saying, well, no, this is what we can tolerate. That's great. So one of the things they got out of this was this idea of time and a half pay for Sunday and holidays will go away. And it's an interesting idea, right? So essentially we have caps on how much you can work in a given week anyways. But and this, by the way, is only for retail. So if you're an office worker that has hourly wages, you are not affected by this. But for retail folks, you now would not get time and a half if you work on a Sunday or a holiday. I'm not sure how that works with the double time and a half has become time and a half, but whatever. But if that goes away, that goes away. The only negative I see of this is simply if you have a holiday, that employer would now be more inclined to just open because really, what's the difference? I'm sure they'll get enough business versus if it was double time and a half, they'd be like, well, is it really worth it? Maybe I'll just let them have the holiday off, and right. So the flip side of that is maybe the employee wants it; they want to work that day. Like, good for them, right? Why not? But now that goes away. So now they would just be working normal hours. They still 40-hour limit, so that's fine. So that's kind of where I am. I'm not for or against. I don't really care as much. I just like the idea that employees might have had that holiday just because the employer would have to think twice about, do I want to open because of the cost, right?
So, like you said, this is really for retail type people. CVS and all these others will still be open. They will still have their employees there. And I honestly believe that, at least for the larger companies, they're still going to have time and a half.
Yeah.
This is something that's been traditionally with them in the state, and I think that employees expect it. This is something that employers will have the pressure from the employees to maintain. I don't think we'll see a great dwindling in the number of days for time and a half. That said, I see this as a very weak alternative to getting up to $15 per hour minimum wage. This is also not entirely affecting all markets, whereas minimum wage does.
Yep.
So if you're an office worker, generally you have someone that comes in and they clean out the facilities. That person's minimum wage will have to go up. But at the same time, that you don't offset with anything. I'm not a huge fan of this. I really wish they would have went for something a little more dramatic, something that would have been more beneficial to the markets. But at least they try to pull out something. The other one that they actually did was the sales tax holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
And the sales tax holiday, I think, was a little bit better, but I don't think it's going to be as beneficial as they think. For those that don't know, in Massachusetts, once a year they voted on a sales tax holiday. But in this bill,
they being Congress, so they would determine whether it made sense that year or not.
Yep.
And if it does, we would go ahead with it.
So both the paid time and a half and the sales tax holiday came in to offset the lowering of our sales tax in our state from 6.25% down to 5%. They threw that out and they got these two things instead.
Yep.
Sales tax holiday is a nice little boost. I think some families this really benefits them if they're going to buy furniture, televisions, things that are medium but not large purchases. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's going to do anything other than create an artificial purchasing cycle like Christmas does. People go out, they save money throughout the year, and then they try to buy during Christmas, usually on Black Friday when big sales are going on, or Cyber Monday when the big sales are going on. But I don't think this is going to generate more than just a little bump in sales for that one weekend in August that they've determined. I don't think this is a really good way to offset the minimum wage or the paid leave either. I mean, we're going to have $800 million in new taxes, plus the new cost for minimum wage. versus no time and a half and this one sales tax holiday. I just don't see it being a grand bargain. What do you think?
Yeah, so the sales tax holiday again is kind of a take it or leave it for me. I don't usually take advantage of it. I'm sure though it does help some people out, and I understand it from a retail perspective, right? Because usually you get these, large sales in the November December timeframe that usually makes them go in the black. That's usually why it's Black Friday. It's usually they run in the red for most of the year because they're underperforming, and they make up for it and they make their profit during those last couple of months of the year because of all the massive sales. And they wanted to do something in the lull of the summer. Usually it's kind of a low period. People are on vacations. They're not really spending as much in retail. So this would give them an incentive to get a little bit of a sales bump in the middle of the summer, which, okay, I get it. It's fine. It's an interesting idea. And making it permanent just gives you that same thing as a Black Friday. Hey, there's going to be this, mid-August, whatever it is, day. So basically July, don't bother buying anything because you might as well just wait till August because that's when you're going to, so unless you're buying something very expensive, it doesn't matter. You might as well just wait till August, right? So that's an interesting idea. I guess we'll see how that pans out. And yeah, I don't know if it really offsets a lot of the other things that were done. However, we'll have to see how this gets implemented, and I'll take it with positive note that hey, this might be good, but usually these things always have negative consequences too.
Exactly.
So we'll see how it goes. So that's kind of where I am on that as well. I'm ambivalent to it. I don't really care much about the sales tax holiday.
So with the entire package in mind, this grand bargain, the entire act, what do you think? If you had to grade it on A through F, where do you put this?
I would definitely say it's more pro the retail employee type person. It's definitely more helpful to those who are not making as much, like you mentioned, even cleaning crews, things like that. They might not make enough money to sustain. Therefore, this might help them. That's good. There's another corollary to this is, will it really help them? Even $15, is it enough to actually survive? Would they still need assistance? If they do, is it really enough to warrant making this change? I've had different ideas on how to do this, and maybe we should, discuss that at some point. But
Sure.
I don't know if it's enough to actually offset. What I would love to see is that we get people who work full time or more not need government assistance. That's awesome, right?
Yes.
That'd be a great thing.
It's a great goal.
But that, there's plenty of other issues that happen that causes that problem, right? There's a housing bubble that we create from government interference. There's other inflationary processes that we have because of the government itself. And this causes so much turmoil that it becomes difficult for folks to sustain. Even if they're making a decent, enough wage, it becomes, useless at some point because of the government. I get it. It's a good, step to try to help those folks. There are corollaries. It's going to hurt other folks. Everything you do has some negative, right? So I understand it from their perspective. It'd be great, hopefully, but we'll see. We'll have to see how it works out 5-10 years down the road. Does it actually do what they anticipate? I tend to think not, but we'll see how it goes. So that's kind of where I am. Well, this was a video from MassInform. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or would like to support us, please visit us on
Twitter, Facebook, Patreon. Links will all be below in the description. You can also leave us a comment, and if you have something you want us to cover, comment down below as well.
Thanks again. Goodbye.